This is the Zac Anesbury Show.
Welcome. On today's podcast clip, we have Professor Colin Campbell from the University of San Diego, California, United States. Welcome, Colin. Thank you very much for joining us for the podcast today and taking time out of your, I was going to say busy day, but you just told me that it's actually your evening. So from your free and available evenings, you've decided to speak to us. So thank you very much for that.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
So one of the best ways to kind of start for us and for the audience is to, I know quite a lot about you and we've met, but to provide them with a little bit of insights as to, who is this Colin guy that we're hearing about today?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm an associate professor here at the University of San Diego in California. And I'm also the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Advertising Research at the moment as well, too. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very impressive CV, as I'm sure everyone will hear in a minute. So I like to go all the way back, and it could be pretty recently, I guess. But when did you start to think that marketing was something for me, and I guess for you in particular, advertising? When did that all sort of come to fruition?
Probably during my university days in the beginning, during undergrad, just because of the fact that I knew I always liked business. And my dad's an engineer, so he was sort of pushing me to become an engineer. But I liked the business side sort of more interesting. I thought it was more interesting, and the marketing just kind of came out of finding it interesting. So I've always liked economics. I found marketing just kind of cool because it was a kind of a neat blend of both the science and also the art side of things as well too.
Right. So was it through high school you did some business sort of type courses that set you up?
It was in in undergrad. Yeah. So in Canada, they don't, I went to school in Canada. There's no real business courses in high school, right? It's your typical sort of math, science, English, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. Just for context for you, we kind of have almost prerequisites for it. So we have business studies and accounting and those sorts of subjects that you kind of need to do to then get into your business course at the university level.
That's cool. Yeah, no, they don't have that. I guess you could take AP, the sort of first year university courses in high school, but the one I went to didn't actually have that, so it wasn't really a thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's fascinating. So, what was your first year of undergraduate like? So, you did a Bachelor of Business Administration, specializing in marketing and economics, at the Beatty School of Business at Simon Fraser University. So, what did your first year look like then?
It's a sort of a liberal arts style degree. So the first year is really kind of your prerequisites that you take, English, philosophy, math, calculus, all that kind of stuff, right? But it wasn't really that businessy until you kind of get into your third or fourth year of the degree. And that's where I enjoyed economics. So I started taking more and more economics as my electives. And then that, as a result, I just had so many courses. I'm I might as well just go for a dual degree and include that as well too. Yeah.
It's interesting that you enjoyed economics. You hear a lot of undergraduate students who are marketing specialists or whatever, and they don't enjoy that course. But similar to you, one of my favorite courses was, I think it was Intro to Microeconomics or something, and the content was relatively dry. And this was back when they had overhead projectors, and they would be.
I had that too. Yeah.
But my lecturer at the time, Ken Adams, I think his name was, he was a very funny man. And so I kind of thought to myself, if this guy can make a course that most people don't like and are kind of forced to do and make it enjoyable, I've sort of adopted some of his teaching style along the way, actually.
Oh, that's very cool. Okay.
Yeah. So you found the content very interesting, or lectures?
Yeah, for some reason I find economics, the theories and the ideas of how it works seem kind of to make sense to me. The math is a bit more terrifying, I must say. Doing it at an undergrad level is very approachable. At least I found it pretty approachable. But then when I went to do my master's, I discovered that doing matrix, algebra, differential equations and stuff, right, is much more difficult than going through and doing it in a simple form in undergrad. So there I was whoa, there's a lot happening here. And as you notice, I then turned back to marketing for my PhD. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you did your Master of Economics at the University of British Columbia. And you returned back to your undergraduate university for your PhD, right?
That's right. Yeah. So those are the two major universities in Vancouver, which is where I grew up. And so basically I was was wanting to stay in Vancouver for education, and so it was just easy to kind of flip back and forth between those. And I'd actually like run into a professor from my undergrad at a Starbucks actually halfway through my econ masters, and he was the one who was like, "Oh, well, have you thought about doing a PhD? You know, you were a strong student. I'd discussed some research grants as well too. Have you considered doing this?" And then he basically got the admissions office in the business school to give me an extension because it was already past the deadline. And then I got the first GNAT I could do, which I think was a week later or something. And then obviously, was okay enough to be able to get in. And then the rest is kind of history from there. So
yeah, very nice. Do you think your the masters in economics, did that help you during your PhD at all?
I think so, definitely, because it's more research based the way they were teaching it, right? Like I went for the economics masters primarily because of that. It was much cheaper. So in Canada, like the schooling is only quite cheap, or relative to the US, anyways. And I think it was like $5,000 for like a master's in economics, whereas like an MBA was like 50,000. And so I was like, oh, like I like economics, why not? It's a 1-year program. I'll do this and sort of see what I want to do afterwards. And it was much more research based, so that was kind of cool. And obviously, I learned like regression in a bunch of different ways because like economists are very good at going through and doing regressions in very detailed ways. So yeah.
Yeah, that's especially what I was thinking. It would help you with all the maths and equations and regressions, especially for sure.
Yeah.
I noticed that your PhD is it 6 years, the program that you did? And so that struck me as a little bit different because I'm from obviously Australia.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, okay, our program's generally 3 to 4 years. And I was just wondering the differences there.
Well, I think it's maybe just like the timing is probably what drove that, because it's like you start like in September 2006, was it? Yeah. And then I actually graduated in January 2011, right before I was moving to Monash. I'm moving down to Melbourne actually, to go work at my first job in Monash. And so like I guess it's like this, the years are like it's really more so like 2006 to 2010, I guess. Yeah. But still, yeah. But no, like I think it's becoming more typical in the US and Canada to go longer, just because there's people coming out with like really strong publication records. Mm-hmm. And so like the bar kind of keeps going up and up in terms of like what you need to kind of be able to be marketable in the job market. So
yeah, I heard someone coming back from a US based conference and they were talking about having almost like a hero paper or something like that. Like they were trying to get into marketing or journal consumer research, or at least under first or second round of revision. And that would be their kind of ticket into the academic world.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like there's some people who are like coming out of like major schools and they've got like, a couple of GCRs or a couple of things like that. It's just like, whoa, it's impressive, but it definitely must take a lot of work as well too. And I guess you need extra time to actually get that going, right? Because like in the US and Canada, it's like you have two years of coursework, and then you have like basically a year to work on your thesis proposal. And then typically you defend that. And then that same summer, you go in the job market. All right. And then hopefully you spend like the fall kind of working your thesis and getting like hopefully offers from like schools and doing like interviews. And then hopefully you will wrap that up in October, November. And then you have the rest until like basically May, June to kind of finish up your thesis. Right. That's the idea. So, and often you'll have your job offers contingent upon finishing your thesis. Right. So if you don't finish in time, they actually can pull their offer. Not all schools do that, right? But so like there's definitely a good motivation to kind of go through and get that done. But it's pretty quick then. You have like the 2 years of coursework, 1 year to basically get your idea together, and then the last year is basically just getting hired and wrapping up, right? Yeah. So like having an extra year or even a year and a bit gives you just more breathing room too. So
yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know. Do any of the universities in Australia, operate that way? Because we definitely don't have a big coursework component at the University of South Australia.
Right, yeah. I honestly don't know. Yeah. I wasn't involved in the PhD program on it, so I don't. If they have one, question mark. I should know this, but I don't.
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting one. And yeah, so I've heard they're actually quite useful programs in some sense, but yeah, it cuts into your naturally your thesis time. Some of the best advice I had. So I did honors and then a master's by research, and then went into PhD. And it was advice that Professor Rachel Kennedy had given me, which was don't jump from your honors into a PhD. You're kind of technically allowed to because you got a first class, but take those 2 years out during your masters, learn additional research skills, get some runs on the board with publications, because it will make you more hireable and more competitive when you finish your PhD.
Yeah.
And as a young person, you're kind of like a bit in a rush and push forward. And but I did, after about a couple of days, I did realize she was spot on with her advice, and I'm been forever grateful since for those exact reasons you said.
That's good. Yeah.
Is that advice that you would give to other people? And
I think it really depends. Or I mean, like I guess here it's like easier potentially to just like extend the program, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it sounds like if that's not possible in Australia, then I guess the approach to UTech could make sense, especially if you're already employed too, right? That's always good.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, definitely. So you completed your PhD, and in terms of your first academic job, it was something along the lines of an instructor or something like that. Was that still during your PhD candidature?
oh yeah. So I was
Similar
teaching. I was teaching while I was doing my PhD as well too. Like it was like an instructor. I guess like you could think like lecturer might be what they called it in Australia.
Yeah.
Right. But it wasn't a formal role. It's just like as you do your PhD, you also do teaching. And so like depending on some schools, you might do like one course you teach just to kind of check the box before going publications. So before going on the job market. And that'll be like typical of more research heavy schools. And then more balanced schools will have it where they'll be teaching or doing TAing as well too, as you're going through and doing your PhD. And that's part of the funding package that you get to basically support yourself during that time. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. And so it is not just tutoring, right? You're actually running the course?
Oh yeah, no, I was teaching courses. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I think it started like 6 months in or something. Because they needed somebody to help out with like the econ, one of the econ classes for like, it was like a pre-MBA program type thing that they have for like people who are like trying to qualify for the MBA but are kind of on the edge. They'll have them do like a couple of classes to kind of prove themselves and get a better sense of it. And they needed somebody to help with that. And so I started doing that, and then I started doing some marketing courses as well too. But I did it, pretty early on. So
yeah. Did you find that to be in hindsight, to be such a benefit for you, like when you then went onto the open job market, because you had that additional extra skill, the extra training and stuff like that?
It really depends where you're going. So if you're aiming for like a really, like again, like top tier sort of research school, they would see that as like a negative because it's taken away time from research, and they would much value more if they want to show that they want you to show that you can teach, and that you should have like a course or two that you've done with good evals, but they would care much more about publications, right? So it really depends like where you're going. Whereas some schools will like that. They're like, oh, you already have 2 or 3 courses prepped, you know how to teach. This is not just a one-off, right? You can do it reliably over a couple, years or semesters, right? That could be a good thing. So it really just depends on like where you want to be going. Yeah.
Yeah. And what your passions are, whether you want to be purely teaching, or like more of a balanced. I think that's great advice actually for people to really think about, where do I want to end up at the end of my PhD, and then find a program that helps you get to that purely research balance.
I mean, pragmatically as well too. Like we also got, the more teaching you did, the more money you made, right? So like there was an incentive. Like if you can make extra money, why not, right? That's always good too. But there is that trade-off of like, maybe it was better to spend that time on more research. I don't know. It's always tough, right? It's looking back. Yeah.
I don't know. I find there's some sort of value to teaching people things. Like I was teaching like the consumer behavior course for postgrads, I think during my PhD, maybe early in my PhD. And I was talking about, segmentation and brand user profile stuff. And I started questioning some of the concepts I was teaching them in real time. Yeah. And I stopped and I paused, and I remember writing a note, and I said, apologies for the interruption. I needed to write this down, but I forgot it. Ended up being a publication 2 years later.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome. Yeah.
I started critiquing the stuff I was teaching, and I'm like, let's see if I can find something here.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So I think there's value for teaching for sure. So you then had a visiting professor role. What does that entail? I wasn't quite sure what that sort of refers to.
Oh, yeah, it's a little bit vague on the CV, I guess, right? So that one was basically, I wasn't actually there for a long period of time. So there was a colleague I knew who was working on with some research, and they needed some people to help out with like short courses, because the University of Mannheim has a pretty strong like international student program. It's one of the few sort of German schools that runs in the US schedule. So it makes it easy for them to get like transfer students in for like, not transfer, but like exchange students is the right word, in for like a semester or something. And they just wanted some people to like help out with that, like with teaching. So basically, was just going over to teach like block courses for like a week or two to a bunch of their exchange students because they obviously taught those in English because there were people from all around the world. And so I was just going and doing that. I did that for I guess 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Did that involve any sort of research component to that as well?
I was like basically going over to teach was an excuse to like for me to come over and get paid, and then I would work with the colleagues there on like research as well too.
Yeah.
So it was kind of good. It's always nice you can do both, right? So
yeah. And what city is that in? So you said it's in Germany. Which city?
it's basically like a 40-minute train ride from like Frankfurt. So it's pretty convenient getting out of it's a big airport. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't been to that city yet, but I've heard it's gorgeous, right?
Heidelberg is. So Mannheim is like, it was a city that they built pretty quickly after World War II. So it's not the most, picturesque city. It's a cool city, but it's not the most picturesque. Heidelberg is like a 15-minute train ride. That one is stunning. It's like I think it's like a preserved heritage site or something. There's like a huge castle on the top of a mountain. It's just by the river. It's very, very, very pretty. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. The world is, when you can find those little nuggets of joy in the world. So you then moved to Monash as a lecturer.
Yeah, that was my first job after my PhD.
Yeah, very cool. So you moved to Australia then?
Yeah, I moved down to Australia. I was there for 2 years, and then from there I went and moved to Kent State, which is in like Kent, Ohio. It's about 45 minutes south of Cleveland, and I was there for 5.5 years, and then I moved out to San Diego in 2018. I've been here now for I guess almost 6 years. Crazy, yeah, it goes fast. Yeah.
So you moved, I mean, you seem to have no problems moving around the world. You're in Canada and then you've moved to Germany for a bit and then you moved to Australia.
Well, I didn't move to Germany. I was just visiting Germany when I was yeah. So I'd go for like a week, come back, and then, go for a week again, like 6 months later, right? So, yeah.
How do you find that? Is it just something you're natural to, or?
Yeah, I mean, like my family, when we were younger, we moved like a little bit as well too. So like, I'm not averse to it. It obviously I think it gets easier as well too as you kind of go through it. But I think probably the first one, like moving to Australia, I thought it would not be as much work as it was, just because of the fact that we'd gone down. My family has like friends who live in Brisbane, and so we've been down 2 or 3 times when I was like younger. But it's like visiting is very different than like moving, because like on the surface, I think like they're Canada, the U.S., Australia, they're all like industrialized, affluent countries. Things work reasonably well everywhere, right? But then there's different systems, right? So like Canada and the US, I think are somewhat similar, but there's still differences. But I think there's a lot more differences in Australia, I think, in just sort of like how processes operate and things like that, like getting a new bank account or just the way that credit cards are run, stuff like that. And I didn't really know, but then of course, once you get, you kind of have to go through it, so.
Yeah, oh, very cool. How did you find the process of applying for your first job and getting that role at Monash? Was it fairly difficult, or?
I mean, it was an interview, right? So it was at Summer AMA. Had an interview with Mike Ewing and then Colin Jevons, like the typical sort of interviewing style, right? And then the rest is kind of history from there. So I wasn't doing it was right after the financial crisis, 2011. So I would have been interviewing I guess a year earlier. And so it was basically, kind of a tough job market that year. So I was just sort of doing like a soft set of interviews, and Monash worked out. So it was like down to do that. And yeah.
Yeah, you can definitely do worse than Monash. Very well ranked globally.
That's true.
Yeah. And from what I hear, good research budgets as well to support young academics and established academics. So you moved then back to the US. Did you move to, was it a higher position, or was it similar, moving sort of horizontal, or?
Oh, I was just looking to go back to the US because I found that it just I was hoping to be honest, be in Kent State probably for a couple of years, and it just ended up being longer, just in terms of I got kind of busy with course prep, and I was also learning stuff. There's some really good people there that I learned a lot from as well too. And then just time kind of flies sometimes too, right? So I was just getting a lot done, kind of retooling, upskilling some of my research stuff, obviously expanding my teaching as well too. And then it was whoa, it ended up being 5.5 years. So, I mean, going into it, I didn't expect that, but it was great. So,
yeah. No, that sounds great. So when, so you moved around a little bit. Now you're at, it was university, whereabouts are you now? Which,
University of San Diego.
Yeah, that's right, in California. So have you gone through the promotion system to get to associate professor, or have you kind of gone for like a level at one university and then managed to promote yourself to another university at a higher level?
Yeah. No, it's all been pretty like horizontal up until like I got tenure last summer.
Okay.
And I think I was like the world's longest like assistant professor, because I was like basically an assistant professor for like almost like a decade, like 11, 12 years, I guess. I don't know. But finally got it done last summer, so it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's sort of pros and cons about going with each of them, right? So I remember being a fresh-faced PhD student and going to conferences and meeting people and being like, oh, it's this person and they're a senior lecturer from this university. And then coming back and seeing them at the same conference like a year later, all of a sudden they're like an associate professor but at another university. And it made me realize that there was like a different system, and you didn't have to get promoted with your own university. You could then sort of move.
You just jump, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's probably definitely easier. I think in some ways you don't do the whole tenure packet and stuff, although it may be different in Australia. But like I think the UK does it a lot as well too. I know people in London jump around a lot, right? Just because of the fact that it's sometimes easier to get a new job with a different title than it is to actually get promoted, right? So
yeah, exactly. And they're not fun processes to go through. Promotion panels and writing your application and everything. Yeah,
it takes so much time. It's amazing. Yeah, but
exactly. Amazing. So I guess so you've just gotten tenure. That's amazing. How does that sort of system then work in the US? Moving from, does that mean it was fixed term kind of contracts before that, or?
Technically, you're on like a 1-year contract up until you get tenure. Yeah, and I guess we're still technically on 1 year contracts, but it's meant to be like forever, I guess, because there's tenure. So.
Oh, okay. Well, you always hear that that's a good thing. We have a little bit of a different system where we usually work on fixed term contracts, and usually they're sometimes tied to research grants. So the research grant might give allocation for like a level B or a level C or something like that for 6 months, 12 months. And then the continuing positions generally are tied to teaching. And then that's more balanced, 40% teaching, 40% research sort of thing. 50% admin or whatever they allocate for it.
Hey guys, it's Zac Anesbury here with just a couple of quick reminders. If you've enjoyed today's podcast, then make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode. There are plenty more interviews to come with some of the world's leading marketing academics and practitioners. You do not want to miss these. In the meantime, if you're looking for another way to connect, then follow me on Twitter at Zac Anesbury. That is ZACANESBURY. For my take on the marketing issues of the day.
That was the Zac Anesbury Show.